Okay, so continuing on, we left off. The parents had taken a look inside the room, and there's a whole issue with the lions. The lions were eating something, they were acting strange. They approach in an attack way toward the parents, and so much so that, like at the end of the page that we just looked at, they were like slamming against the door, trying to get at George and Lydia. Okay. And a key thing was that they both felt useless and like they don't belong. So they have dehumanization due to technology. They become they feel less human, they feel less useful due to dependency. So it's over-dependence on the technology leads to this dehumanization. So there's a direct link here between these two things, because they're no longer doing their natural roles or natural jobs and functions. Even in parenting, well, I mean, you can look at this text. It's an older text, so we're dealing with the 1950s and 1960s, so it's going to have a more traditional view of women's roles. But they're just saying like they don't have anything to do. The house does everything for them. George has to take even medicine, drugs to help him fall asleep. He's drinking more alcohol, smoking more. Okay, so there's a dehumanization process that the technology has brought about in their own sense of belonging or sense of family roles, parenting roles, and we have a view that there are going to be problems with their children. Okay. At dinner, they ate alone. For Wendy and Peter were at a special plastic carnival across town and had televised home. Sorry, there's a few typos. They had televised home to say they'd be late to go ahead eating. So George, Hadley, bemused, sat watching the dining room table produce warm dishes of food from its mechanical interior. So notice they eat alone, and they basically FaceTime home, televised home. It's like a visual telephone call. And notice the description of George, bemused. It's like slightly confused, slightly out of touch. He doesn't really know like what's going on in his family. Okay, so it doesn't seem like a favorable description of the dad, and we're seeing the breakdown of family. They're not eating together. They're alone, and their kids are off having fun at some kind of carnival. "We forgot the ketchup," he said. "Sorry," said a small voice within the table, and ketchup appeared. As for the nursery, thought George Hadley, it won't hurt for the children to be locked out of it for a while. Too much of anything isn't good for anyone, and it was clearly indicated that the children had been spending a little too much time on Africa. That sun, he could feel it on his neck like a hot paw. Okay, notice the description. Okay, so sun, heat imagery is directly connected to lions. Okay, so we'll get into that more about lions, but notice the hot paw gives this lion-like description to the sun. Okay, so far the heat focus and the burning intensity of the sun. It's almost violent in its description, right? Like a hot pot on his neck, grabbing him by the neck to kill him. Okay? So sun imagery is going to connect to lions more directly later, but we see it just in this simile here. So this is a simile because it uses the word like to compare two things, the sun and the lion's paw. And the lions and the smell of blood. Remarkable how the nursery caught the telepathic emanations of the children's minds and created life to fill their every desire. The children thought lions and there were lions. The children thought zebras and there were zebras. Sun, sun, giraffes, giraffes. Death and death. Where did this projection come from? Where did this virtual simulation come from? The children's minds. They're the ones who are thinking about Africa and vultures and death and a blazing hot sun. That last, he chewed tastelessly on the meat that the table had cut for him. Death thoughts. They were awfully young, Wendy and Peter, for death thoughts. Or no, you were never too young, really. Long before you knew what death was, you were wishing it on someone else. When you were 2 years old, you were shooting people with cat pistols. But this, the long, hot African veldt, the awful death in the jaws of a lion, and repeated again and again. Where are you going? He didn't answer Lydia. Preoccupied, he let the lights glow softly on ahead of him, extinguish behind him as he padded to the nursery door. He listened against it. Far away a lion roared. He unlocked the door and opened it. Just before he stepped inside, he heard a faraway scream, and then another roar from the lions, which subsided quickly. He stepped into Africa. Many times in the last year he had opened the door and found Wonderland, Alice, the Mock Turtle, or Aladdin and his magical lamp, or Jack Pumpkinhead of Oz, or Dr. Dolittle, or the cow jumping over a very real appearing moon, all the delightful contraptions of a make-believe world. How often he had seen Pegasus flying in the sky ceiling, or seen fountains of red fireworks, or heard angel voices singing. But now is yellow, hot Africa, this bake oven with murder in the heat. Perhaps Lydia was right. Perhaps they needed a little vacation from the fantasy, which was growing a bit too real for 10-year-old children. So we get a little view of the approximate age of the children. It was all right to exercise one's mind with gymnastic fantasies, but when the lively child mind settled on one pattern, it seemed that at a distance for the past month, he had heard lions roaring, smelled their strong odor seeping as far away as his study door. But being busy, he had paid it no attention. Okay? So he starts to notice the duration of this simulation. Like, how long have the children been imagining this particular scenario, which the technology is putting on the screens? George Hadley stood on the African veldt grassland alone. The lions looked up from their feeding, watching him. The only flaw to the illusion was the open door through which he could see his wife far down the dark hall, like a framed picture, eating her dinner abstractedly. "Go away," he said to the lions. They did not go. He knew the principle of the room exactly. You sent out your thoughts, whatever you thought would appear. "Let's have Aladdin and his lamp," he snapped. The Veltland remained. The lions remained. "Come on, room, I demand Aladdin," he said. Nothing happened. The lions mumbled in their baked pelts. "Aladdin!" He went back to dinner. "The full room's out of order," he said. "It won't respond." Or what? Or it can't respond, said Lydia. "Because the children have thought about Africa and lions and killing so many days that the room's in a rut." Could be. Or Peter said it to remain that way. Said it? He may have gotten to the machinery and fixed something. He doesn't know machinery. He's a wise one for 10, that IQ of his. Nevertheless... Hello, Mom. Hello, Dad. The Hadleys turned. Wendy and Peter were coming in the front door, cheeks like peppermint candy, eyes like bright blue agate marbles, a smell of ozone on their jumpers from their trip in the helicopter. You're just in time for supper, said both parents. We're full of strawberry ice cream and hot dogs, said the children, holding hands. But we'll sit and watch. Okay, notice the kids, what have they been eating? Right? They're eating junk food. Okay, so we're dealing with disobedient, casual children. Okay, they're the way they talk to their parents, and what did they do? They ate junk food. They're late for dinner. They don't come home for dinner. They're out having fun. Independent. They're a bit independent from the parents as well. Well, that's kind of the parents' fault, too. Yes, come tell us about the nursery, said George Hadley. The brother and sister blinked at him and then at each other. Nursery? All about Africa and everything, said the father with false joviality. I don't understand, said Peter. Your mother and I were just traveling through Africa with Rod and Wheel, Tom Swift and his electric lion, said George Hadley. There's no Africa in the nursery, said Peter simply. Oh, come now, Peter, we know better. I don't remember any Africa, said Peter to Wendy. Do you? No. Run see and come tell. She obeyed. Wendy, come back here, said George Hadley, but she was gone. House lights followed her like a flock of fireflies. Too late, he realized he had forgotten to lock the nursery door after his last inspection. Here's another problem. We have lying. The kids are lying to their parents. Wendy will look and come tell us, said Peter. She doesn't have to tell me. I've seen it. I'm sure you're mistaken, Father. I'm not, Peter. Come along now. But Wendy was back. It's not Africa, she said breathlessly. So notice how Peter is talking to his dad. He calls him Father. Okay. This is extremely distant and formal. We don't normally in Western culture say father like that. So there's a distance and a formality to their relationship. It's not warm father-son relationship, but it's also very insulting and what we would say insolent. Insolent is showing disrespect toward those you should show respect for in a very bad tone of voice. We'll see about this, said George Hadley, and they all walked down the hall together and opened the nursery door. There was a green, lovely forest, a lovely river, a purple mountain, high voices singing, and Rima, lovely and mysterious, lurking in the trees with colorful flights of butterflies, like animated bouquets, lingering in her long hair. The African Veldt land was gone. The lions were gone. Only Rima was here now, singing a song so beautiful it brought tears to your eyes. George Hadley looked in at the changed scene. Go to bed, he said to the children. They opened their mouths. You heard me, he said. They went off to the air closet where a wind sucked them like brown leaves up the flue to their slumber rooms. George Hadley walked through the singing glade and picked up something that lay in the corner near where the lions had been. He walked slowly back to his wife. What is that? An old wallet of mine, he said. He showed it to her. The smell of hot grass was on it and the smell of a lion. There were drops of saliva on it. It had been chewed and there were blood smears on both sides. So there's an item of George's that the lions had that they were chewing on. And the smell of them was on it. And they would smell George's smell on that wallet as well. So some foreshadowing here.